In here in Les Sables d'Olonne, and hopefully not going to be like this for the finishes, which we're expecting next week. Now then, it's day 74 on the race course. For those of you who are sharp-eyed, you'll have noticed we had a day 74 a couple of days ago. That was really celebrating the anniversary of Armel Leclerc's victory into Les Sables d'Olonne on the last race. Well, this is really day 74. There's still nothing in it at the front of the fleet. It's all to play for. The tension is growing among the top 8 or top 9 boats in particular. It's going to be all about the entrance into this high pressure system that the leaders are coming into. Whether Louis Burton can go round the outside and do the Buffalo Girls move, or whether the inside cutting the fromage, cutting the corner plays out for the likes of Damien Sagan. It's all to play for at the moment. Louis Burton has the option to possibly have a little bit of a corridor of breeze, almost a private corridor, and that could give him a little bit of a jump. Meanwhile, Clarice Kramer crossed the equator last night, and at the Cape Horn this weekend, well, Sam Davis, who's of course abandoned, is racing off the race course. She should cross then, followed by Alexia Barrier, and indeed on Sunday, Ari Hosela. And then it would be the first time that the last boat has rounded Cape Horn before the first boat is even into the Bay of Biscay. So that's the situation just now. Let's join my guest today, as ever on Thursdays, the ever reliable Marcus Hutchinson. Marcus, how are you?
I'm good, Andy. Good to see you.
What's happening there? What's happening back in Thomas-Rion Racing Base?
Well, we hope we're a week away from the finish, and so there's a huge amount of planning going on because the event organization gave us the arrival protocol and how many people we can have on the dock and how many boats can go out and see him. Obviously, it's very complicated in the COVID context, and we also have a curfew situation here in France where everybody's got to be home by 6 in the evening and what have you. So we have to be very careful with how we plan all of these things. But as we all know, the finishes of boat races kind of fall outside of, well, what time are they going to finish at? We don't really know. So we're planning all of that and getting our ribs ready to go down and just getting all of our ducks in a row, because obviously there's an awful lot of people that want to be there but that can't come. So we're organizing secondary situations so that Thomas can have after the press conference some how shall I call it, private time via Zoom through in the cinema with a lot of his partners and friends and fans all over the country.
And how is Thomas? I mean, we saw him yesterday in the video, and he was starting to feel a little bit tense, starting to worry about the last few days.
Yeah, well, there's no question. It's very close. Obviously, he's a sportsman at heart, and he's looking at his performance because, as you can imagine, it's not just about finishing at this stage. They really want to do well, and he's been on the podium pretty much the whole way around this race. You know, there's 1 or 2 times he's dropped away, but has managed to come back into it. And this, in spite of only having 1 foil on his boat, he's done an incredible job, even if I say it myself. And he's obviously very conscious of the fact that, 5 or 6 boats are going to finish within a few hours of each other, and the rankings will be decided as a result of that. And he finds himself a little bit powerless. He's not a master of his destiny on several fronts, but he's looking at all options and trying to keep himself positive and trying to keep it going. Clearly, we're getting low on the food stocks as well. He's got enough food, but it's not the food that he likes anymore. So it's not that he's hungry, but I think he'd like to have some of Mum's soup and fresh bread and butter when he gets ashore.
Something to look forward to. What's your kind of interpretation among the leaders? You're obviously watching it pretty closely with your weather experts.
Well, be careful what I say here. I'm If I was a betting man now, I would for quite a while now I'd have put money on Boris to be on the podium because clearly he's got a very quick boat. We know that boat quite well. We trained against it a lot, and it's intact, and he's in the match, and he's going quickly. But what he's doing is showing quite how fast Apivia and LinkedOut should be going if they both had the use of their port foils. So from that side, it's very frustrating. But Louis Burton, ever since he made his move away from the fleet in the bottom of the South Atlantic on the way down, he's never stopped impressing in terms of his courage in going for what he wants to do and not being shied away by covering the fleet and things like that. He's gone out on a limb there, a little bit to the left, a little bit to the west, going faster and sailing more distance. And you could argue that is that the best tactical solution? They're much better placed than me, but to make those decisions for themselves. But clearly he's going extremely well, and I see him finishing in the top three is without any question. And then obviously Apivia, in spite of their problems, I wonder whether they have been holding back not to push too hard on the bearing of the port foil, and now that they're within spitting distance of the finish and it's do or die and victory is still within their grasp, that they're pushing harder on it. And I hope for them that they manage to keep it all together. But these boats are all tired now, and we're never sure exactly what state everybody's in and whether they've got all of their sails and things like that. Things are beginning to come out now, especially what Yannick Bestaven said the other day. But he's going extremely well again now, and I read this morning that he's back in control of all of his sail wardrobe, which is kind of frightening because his boat's quick.
It is indeed. And one of the keys just now, I think, is going into this high pressure. I think all the skippers will be trying to get as much rest as possible, knowing that they have this final sprint ahead. I know we were hearing from Boris, and he said, I can't wait to get into the high just to get a little bit of rest and prepare. Well,
the high may well be the place where you can't rest, where you really need to be on the case. I think the trades was the place to rest a little bit, and maybe when they get to the other side into the depressions and it gets windy again and they're locked in and everything, that might be a time to get some time. But yeah, no, the next few hours, next few days are going to be critical to how this race finishes.
Marcus, I'll come back to you in just 1 second. We need to look down the rankings at midday, and Charlie Dallin, as ever, still on top. He's leading Boris Herrmann by 77 miles this morning. Boris doing 17.5 knots, as Marcus was saying, kind of showing what speeds Charlie Dallin and Thomas Riong could be doing if they were not compromised with their foils. Riong is in third, doing 14.4 by comparison. Louis Burton still doing really nicely in terms of boat speed at the moment, 20.1 knots, and he's at 28 degrees north, so he's well north of his main contenders. Damien Saguna, the opposite flank of the course, in on the east of the group. He's doing 14.3 knots, and as I say, trying to cut the corner a bit. Yannick Bestaven going quick, 18.7 knots. Giancarlo Podotti going nicely as well, 17.3. Jean Le Cam, he's 326 miles behind the leader, but remember he has that time allowance of 16 hours and 15 minutes, and that almost certainly will come into play after the finish line. Benjamin Dutroux in ninth. We'll see him in a video in just 1 second. But he's been having problems with the weed. Maxime Sorel in 10th and Arnaud Tripon 11th. The internationals we're looking for principally, Alan Rura in 16th, pretty steady. Well, actually still in light winds just now. He's only doing 3 knots in a little high pressure cell just in the South Atlantic. Pip Hare in 17th. She is also in the same system just now. She's very slow and is maybe trying to sort out her wind instruments. We're just talking with her team this morning. That's a big ask for her, but she really does need a functioning wind system to drive her pilot better than she's been having. Then further down, Kojiro Shiraishi, we'll see in 1 second. He's in 19th. Didac Costa in 20th. Miranda Merin in 22nd. And as I say, approaching Cape Horn for the weekend, Alexis Barrier and Ari Hosella 24th and 25th. So as we said, Benjamin Dutroux, the local skipper from Les Sables d'Olonne, he's been having big problems with the weed where he is, and this is Benj this morning.
C'est Benj à bord de Omnia Water Family. Je progresse toujours vers le nord, un peu moins rapidement que les petits copains, mais j'avance quand même. Par contre, c'est l'horreur là, cette mer de sargasses là, c'est hallucinant. Il y en a énormément, vraiment énormément. Et je passe plus de temps à les enlever qu'à naviguer quoi. C'est un truc de malade. Donc voilà, et du coup je peux pas charger vraiment les batteries avec les hydrogénérateurs. Du coup, comme dirait Clément, il faut faire le chameau quoi. Donc essayer de pas trop utiliser, pas trop consommer d'énergie. Voilà.
So Marcus, Benjamin Dutroux there, he's in 9th, struggling a little bit with the weed, but it's a boat you know well and a skipper you know well. If he finished 9th, would he be happy?
Oh, look, Benjamin's sailed an incredible race. I really take my hat off to him. I know him from the Figaro scene, and hats off to all of the team in Saint-Gilles who've helped him develop to the sailor that he is today, because he's an example as to how this can be done. And if he finishes in the top 10, it'd be just incredible, and really a great demonstration. He showed some great pace at different times, and really he sailed smart. But we're now seeing with the trade winds that we had at the moment that there are boats that are faster, and there's not a lot he can do about that. And then that wasn't necessarily the case on the way down. We didn't have as much solid trade winds as we've had on the way up. But he's got a bright future ahead of him. He's a fantastic guy, really nice guy, and I personally look forward to shaking his hand when he gets back in.
Indeed, I mean, I've said a few times, he really is the local hero here for a number of different reasons. But most of all, I think because he's a nice guy, everybody in the town loves him.
Without question. And, you know, the fact that he's out there, I think, is probably a lot to do with the fact that he is a nice guy and has time for everyone, and everyone wants to help him in return. And, you know, it's not easy putting these projects together. And, you know, Benjamin and his team put that project together pretty late, and they had a lot of technical issues last year in the Jacques Vabre and things like that. And, you know, it just hats off to the whole team. They've done an incredible job, and really shows what you can do if you're organized, even if you come a little bit late to the project, to do a nice Vendée Globe. And I hope it's an example for people watching this, sailors, international sailors. You know, it is doable, this. And Benjamin is, you know, he's had a great career in the Figaro beforehand, but has stepped up to this, and with people around him, other Figaro sailors that he had, helped him get to where he is. And it's really good. It's really good.
We've talked a few times, Marcus, about the future for the race and the class. Are there people looking for boats just now?
Yes, there are. The market is open. Personally, I'm getting a few phone calls for people looking for boats or looking for advice on what boats might be available and what might be right for them. There's always a musical chairs situation at the end of the Vendée Globe. Personally, since 2 Vendée Globes now, I've bought or sold 7 IMOCAs, I think, or helped people buy and sell that many boats. So I know a little bit about it, and it's interesting that it's taken a bit longer. There were a few boats sold before the race started. In fact, 4 years ago, obviously COVID has made this a little bit more complicated, but the fact that the Vendée Globe has managed to be run in spite of the complexities of the current pandemic, I think has given an awful lot of people confidence that we can do things. You know, we can't all just stay at home the whole time, and there's value to these things, and we've got to look positively and look forwards. And so, you know, I'd say that to anyone out there, this is more than doable. There are boats out there. There are teams out there. There's a sailing program. IMOCA's put together a program for the next 4 years, which is very exciting, and there's plenty to do. So yeah, we should be looking at the future.
Indeed, but interesting to reflect that I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the first boats to be sold, or before the finish of the last race, was Armand Lecléache's boat, which is of course Louis Burton's now, and that looks like a very, very smart move now.
It does, doesn't it? But this is the thing, is that quite often the first 4 or 5 decisions that you make when you're going to do a project like this are the most important decisions that you make. And you know, Louis, I don't know him particularly well, obviously. You know, we're in the same scene, and him and his wife Servan, you know, they're great sailors and all the rest of it. They have their business in Saint-Malo. They probably haven't sailed as much in West Brittany as the rest of them, and so when they do appear, you know, there is a little bit of a tendency to perhaps say, oh, well, you know, who are these people? They haven't been sailing against us, but they've shown that they make good decisions, you know, and that's the beautiful thing about the challenge of the Vendée Globe, is to make good decisions at the right time and move forwards with that. You know, the Vendée Globe is not judged halfway through. It's not judged, you know, a year before the start or whatever. It's judged on the finish line, which will be next week, and it's judged by who came first.
Indeed, and we'll wait and see how that goes. But I mean, great for their sponsors, in particular for Bureau Valley, because they've been with Louis since I think 10 years now.
Yes. Well, it's another example of the fact that longevity with sponsorships, you know, it's very difficult to come and use just a one hit at the Vendée Globe to really, or any sporting competition. You can't just show up and, well, you can just come up and do something and then leave afterwards. But there's infinitely more valuable more value if you stick with it and do a couple of cycles, or not necessarily with the same skipper, but just you're in the environment for a reasonable amount of time. You learn how the environment works. You learn as a sponsor how to get the best out of it, and what works and what doesn't work. And Bureau Valley will, hopefully they're getting the most out of this as possible. He certainly can't complain about the performance that Louis has given us, not just on the sporting side, but his ups and downs and technical stories and the way he's communicated. It's excellent.
He's certainly a little bit of a maverick character as well. We'll come back to you in a second, Marcus. We're going to have a quick look through the weather. Say it's all about the entrance and exit out of this high pressure system. There may be an option for Louis Burton. We saw that in some of the files, but let's have a look. This weekend then we should see Alexia Barry and Ari Husela coming into the Horn. Let's look at the weather for them first of all. Well, they're in about 25-30 knots of westerly wind just now, but they have this system coming in behind them, and that's going to give them quite a lot more wind, particularly for Ari on Sunday, maybe as much as 40 knots. But in general, not too bad for them, and a reasonable course into Cape Horn. Then after the Horn, looking up to the northeast of the Falklands, well, we have Miranda Merrin here, just underneath the Horn with Clement Giraud. Sorry, just underneath this high pressure system, still in good conditions from the northwest, and they're just moving towards the centre of the high. They'll skirt round the outside of it probably, and then up here it's still quite complicated for this this group here really. We're looking at Jeremy Bayou now has got the best conditions, getting up into the trades, easterly winds, and now starting to move away from this group. Alan Rura and Arnaud Boissier, difficult for them just now getting across this cold front, the semi-permanent cold front that we see Pip here at the moment. Pip having it quite hard, just trying to get through the system as well, and then into the easterly breezes. Further back, Didac Costa and Kojiro Shiraishi in a different wind system. They're on the circulation of the high pressure in the southeasterly just now, but quite decent conditions. They were a little bit closer to the centre of the high yesterday was Didac with no wind, and it's quite complicated with these two little centres. So that's the situation generally in the South Atlantic, and then look at the real front of the fleet and looking at the animation. Well, really, it's quite difficult to call at the moment. We're looking at a situation with Louis Burton, where he may be able to hook into just a little private corridor of breeze out here. We're watching the evolution of it now. If he can find that, that would give him a big advantage over the period coming into the Azores. Might give him a little bit of a jump, but it's not on all the weather models. But for sure, this lateral separation just now working for him. But there is more and more an advantage to being on the inside of the curve on the approach to the Azores. That seems to be the case as the Azores high pressure elongates and moves to the east. But let's run the animation and see how it looks. So this is now coming into later on today. We can just see Louis Burton out on the outside of the curve, as it were, still in a southerly breeze in general. A little bit less wind pressure just now. Looking, this is tomorrow now. This is looking at this little ridge, the high pressure ridging out a little bit, and may affect this. There may be this little advantage to Louis Burton. And then let's roll it through. There we go. So just watching the evolution of the high, it expands, lighter breezes here, but in general southerly, going round the curve of the high. Now this is this corridor of breeze that we were talking about that Louis may be able to get away down, and getting into that first should give him the advantage, but it's not on all the models, and it's certainly not definitive. Meantime, on the east side, always sailing slightly less distance, and there may be some compression getting up towards the Azores really into the weekend. I'm going to take that screen home with me after the Vendée Globe and keep practicing. It's my favourite part of the Vendée Globe so far. Anyway, listen, Marcus, talk to us a little bit about the future for the Imoca class. You've got a busy season planned, I know, with your team, but how do you see it going with the other teams? Is there a good feeling among the teams?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've all got to look at this with the glass half full perspective because we don't know what's going to happen with pandemic. But if we sat around waiting, nothing would ever happen. That's easier said than done. There's a lot of boats that are lining up to do the ocean race around Europe, which starts from Douarnenez, goes to Lisbon, then goes to Toulon, and then finishes with a Giraglia from Saint-Tropez to Genoa. And that's sort of late May and the first 2 weeks of June that all of that's going to happen. Which is pretty exciting because that's fully crewed, four sailors on board with one woman for that race. Very different kind of sailing, clearly, and we're very interested in doing that. And it's very interesting to have an opportunity to sail the boat again after its refit and with other heads on board, looking at the problems and looking at the situations. And
so you're going to do some sailing yourself, are you?
Oh no, I'm too old and fat to do that. I'm just here to make it help
There's
others.
There's time enough, Marcus.
But then there's obviously the Rolex Fastnet race, which, as we know, is finishing in Cherbourg this year, which is quite interesting because we've got a situation where one of the race offices will be set up in Cherbourg so that all of the French boats that want to do the race can register in Cherbourg, then sail across the channel up the Solent and straight across the start line without having to step foot in the UK, which, right now we know it's going to happen because we can do that, because we don't know whether we can stop in the UK for obvious reasons. And so that's positive. So that's there, and there'll be a lot of IMOCAs doing that. That'll be a two-handed race, then the Défi Azimut, and then the Transat Jacques Vabre, which I believe is not going to Brazil. I don't need to. They'll make arrangements to go somewhere where we can have it safe. So there's pretty full program now. Whether the skippers who finish the Vendée Globe do all of those themselves, or whether they pass their boats off to their co-skippers or to other members of their team to sail, it's every team's individual situation, because there's no question that normally a Vendée Globe year, or a finish of the Vendée Globe year, the skippers are
exhausted.
They need time out, they need to reconnect with family, they need to recover. It's going to take 4 or 5 months for a lot of these guys and girls to really get their heads back together. And so, but the class has got a lot of racing, and there's also new teams appearing that want to get into it straight away.
Cool. Now we've got by this time next week, hopefully Thomas will be finished. What's he looking forward to? What's on his programme? What's he wanted to eat as soon as he gets across the finish line? And you've got all the dancing girls organised for him.
Well, his mum is, he's requested mum's vegetable soup and some really, really, really fresh baguette with Breton butter, and then a meal from his own part of France, so Welsh it's called, which is something that I still haven't got my head around. It's a lot of cheese and what have you. It's a bit like a Welsh rarebit. So that's, as far as the food's concerned, he's interested in that, but clearly he really, really wants to spend time with his 2 kids and his wife, and then connect with a lot of his friends who he hasn't seen since quite a long time before the start, because of course nobody could come and see him at the start. So he has some obligations with sponsors and media and in the organization, but he'll be kicking back for a few days in Les Sables d'Olonne after the finish, within reason as to what's allowed to happen, to spend time with friends and stuff.
Good stuff, Marcus. Now, Kojiro Shiraishi in 20th place. We were speaking with him earlier in the day, and he says that the race is absolutely massive now in Japan. The interest growing as he sails every extra mile. And this is Koji this morning.
今ね、サザンオーシャンを出てね、今気温が24度でね、すごく快適ですよ。いい感じで走ってます。どうぞ。多分ね、それはないです。全スキッパーそうなんだけど、スキッパーは全員もうゴールのことを考えてると思うんだよね。どんどん近づいてきてて、孤独というよりはもう希望に変わってんじゃないかな。僕もそうです。僕もね、これ奇跡が起きるんじゃないかと思って、今からフィニッシュが楽しみでしょうがないです。だからみんなね、スキッパー元気だと思うよ。孤独感というよりも、もうどんどん早くみんなに会いたいなと。早くレサブルどんどん行きたいなと思って、みんな希望に燃えてんじゃないかな。今、どんどんスキッパー元気になってきてると思います。どうぞ。ちょうどね、今、僕が走ってる場所は、日本の真裏なんですよ。ちょうどね、日本の真裏を今走ってるんですよね。だから日本から地球で一番遠いところなんだけど、今日本ではね、バンデグローブっていう言葉が通用するようになりました。今までバンデグローブって何って言われてたんだけど、 僕が参加することによって、バンデグローブということがね、知られるようになったんでね、それは非常にハッピーなニュースです。日本から一番遠く離れててもね、なんか日本の皆さんとつながってる感じで、バンデグローブを日本に広めてますから、どうぞ。いや、まだね、これから先のことはまだわからないです。まだね、ドルドラマスもあるし、ビスケ湾は荒れるだろうし、まだわからないんだけど、こう自信というより信じてるかな。とにかく奇跡の起きることを信じてます。僕は1マイル1マイル、フィニッシュを信じて、ただね、走るだけです。あとは神様にお任せします。どうぞ。
Well, there we go. Kojiro Shiraishi on board DMG Morai 1, one of our favourites on the course just now. Marcus Hutchinson, thank you so much for joining us again this week. Our last time on Zoom. Next week you'll be sitting there, hopefully with a very large hangover, somewhere close to a very happy skipper. Here's hoping.
Yeah. No, I'm happy to be with you next week if all goes well. No problem. Good. Thanks, Andy.
So that's Marcus. Let's look at Ari Husela now. Ari approaching Cape Horn. This is a 20-year adventure for him, and it's coming towards one of the pinnacles. And Ari, as ever, super happy.
Hi all, welcome aboard Stark Imoca during Vendée Globe. It's 21st of January and 74th day on race. And last Vendée Globe 4 years ago was finished in 74 days. The first boat, Arme Clea with the Bank Popular, finished the race in 74 days. So I have still plenty of time to enjoy this, and I'm happy for that. Around 35 days, approximately, maybe less, maybe more, but yeah, still time to enjoy. And today it has been quite busy day, as you can hear now and see also behind me. There are some squalls constantly running over me, and showers of rain and snow grains, and big gusts up to 35 knots. I try to take it easy and have some rest. Hopefully the night will be a bit easier. Now we are just surfing at the 17 knots of speed with only little amount of sails. Anyway, all good aboard, everything works finely.
So there we go, Ari Husela, Cape Horn at the weekend. I say a 20-year dream, and hopefully we'll catch up with Ari as close to Cape Horn as possible. That's all that we have time for today on this Vendée Live in English. Our guest tomorrow is Giovanni Sildini, the Italian solo and record-breaking skipper. Any questions for Giovanni, or indeed anything else to do with the Vendée Globe? As usual, post them on Facebook, Twitter or Instagram. We'll see you tomorrow.